Was Stalin the most successful ruler of Russia in the period 1855 to 1964? Explain with reference to other rulers in the period. So for this question, similar to the previous one, I would say that it's quite a nice way of looking at it is to be judging them on this sort of y-axis of success. So looking at success, and what we'll be looking at to judge Stalin versus other rulers. We're also going to be obviously looking for specific themes which help us do that. For this question, it's quite broad. There's quite a lot to choose from. I would go with agricultural policy, industrial policy, and one on living conditions of the peasants, one on living conditions of urban workers. So here I'm just going to show you an example of how the structure looks for agricultural policy for this question. I would say, first of all, you'd establish what the situation is for Stalin. So I would say Stalin is about here. He is quite successful in terms of he achieves his collective farms, but the results are not always that great, and there are production figures around this and famines that you can bring into it. Then you go, right, so that's Stalin. So actually, let's have a look at some others. So we can, in our helicopter, looking to make sure, well, let's make a little comparison between these two. So yes, it actually appears like Stalin is more successful than than the other ruler here later in the period, which is Khrushchev, okay, whose collective farms are continued, but also he's of the Virgin Land Scheme, which fails. Okay, and you can say, actually, yeah, I agree with the question. Stalin was more successful than Khrushchev. Then you go, well, what about later in the period? I mean, earlier in the period, you've got him compared to Alexander II and the Emancipation, which it does not lead to greatly increased grain production. And you'd say yes, so yeah, also. And also, Stalin is more successful, arguably, than Alexander III, who experienced great famines in the 1890s. Final comparison you make, so actually, well, I don't agree with the question because Stalin is not as successful as Nicholas II and the Stolypin's reforms, which lead to greatly improved production and a growing sort of industrialization of the countryside and growing confidence and growing figures there which you need to quote about the results of Stolypin's land reforms. So, as you can see, as represented on the diagram, you're judging where you see Stalin's policies and how successful they are. You're making comparisons to the other rulers, and the ones you think, well, he is more successful than these, and then you're saying, well, but you can't say he's most successful because Nicholas II was more successful. Okay, so just a little bit of facts on each of those rulers' agricultural policies in line with a judgment about whether they're more or less successful. That's the main content of your paragraph, a closing statement to express your judgment on the question, and you're looking at high marks. Any questions, get to me on the blog.